Let's not talk about it.
At
Let's
least
just
Bob knows how
move
to
on.
use StreamYard.
That was the worst start ever. Can
Oh
I?
my god.
Uh, I have no excuse. I don't know.
First
I
time?
First time for no
Podcast
excuse. Yeah, for
186.
sure.
I mean
186.
The debacle
186. Yeah.
continues.
Something must have happened down the road and made you screw up, but that's okay. Yeah.
No idea. Can't tell
You
you.
said you were going to mash those two videos together like 3 months ago.
Yeah, I really should pull through on that, but
No, I'm okay with this.
just watching it, the train wreck every time.
Yeah, this is Carrie starting the podcast every week. Right there.
Thanks, bud. I really appreciate that.
That video will pop up in every single one.
Probably.
You know, I actually been good today. I don't think I deserve that, but thanks, guys.
We're 2 minutes in, and you're saying you've been good?
I have been good. You know,
Congratulations.
everybody knows Kerry got his renovation done finally. If you look in the back room there, yeah, it looks really good. Anyways,
It does look really good.
It's really sunny there.
It's really sunny. I guess we can maybe do a little bit of banter. All of us except for Dexter was at the Youth Challenge down in Calgary there. Some pretty good playing once again. So once again, Dream Crushers got booed out, but I do have a little bit of the Calgary bowler, Jordan Lowen, who won a Dream Crusher shirt, is actually a Dream Crusher fan. Mm-hmm. And
He just got peer pressure to throw it.
bullied. I think bullied is the right word, right? And,
Oh, I don't know if we go that far, but
That's
yeah,
why
he
I stuck
definitely-
with peer pressure.
well,
He,
I
he
don't-
felt the pressure.
I don't think Stacy Weber is peer. I think she was a pro Rose fan, and I don't think that was going to happen.
Fair.
Is it like when somebody hits a home run in your ballpark and they start chanting, throw it back, like that?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't want to throw it back. I would never throw it back.
Oh no, I'm keeping that. Sell that.
Yeah. But it was good. It was a good event. Some great bowling. We have to kind of give a shout out to Jillian Collins, who won for the girls, and Jordan Lowen from Calgary. I tell you what, you watch Jordan play, and he has like 3 more years left of eligibility. The guy is going to be a good player. No doubt about it.
He's been good for
He's
years already.
he's already a good player.
Oh, I know, but I mean, like, it's scary they had 3 years left. If I was on the Calgary team, I'd be like, the open team is like that guy's gonna have a spot there sooner than later.
Yeah, but that's a good thing, though, right?
Oh,
You
very
want
good.
that.
Yeah.
You want that.
Hopefully, it just bring no different when Brad and Ty and Evan and all those guys came up. We knew we were gonna have our spots limited, so either we play well or we lose a spot, right? So it kind of makes things a little bit more of a competitive matter that way.
We went out and got our level 2.
Oh well, I was the only one how to use it so far. But besides that, thanks.
I know this is a bowling podcast, but like, look what's happening in the golf fantasy league.
Yes, can we talk about golf?
Of course,
You know what?
we can, Ty.
Rain delay screwed me. Rain delay screwed
You gotta
me.
play the elements, guys. You don't know when the tournament starts, and you don't know if it's gonna end early. That's how this rolls.
Yeah. You don't know whether it's going to start on a Wednesday or a Thursday or.
Or end on a Saturday.
Look, if we want to talk about things, I'm facing Tim this week, and I went full sportsmanship. Nobody told me that a tournament was starting on Wednesday. Nobody, not a soul. I went full sportsmanship. I'm like, Tim, it's Wednesday. You have Wu on the bench. Put him in. Put him in. I don't want any excuses. So,
I didn't put him in.
is Tiger back?
Who's gonna miss the cut?
Tiger's back?
Nobody picked him up.
Oh, that is tempting.
I could.
I got a full roster.
I'm
I don't even know.
5-0. How about you guys?
Hey, you know what? I'm
4-1.
not last.
4
I am
and
not
1.
last. Currently, I am
2 and
ninth.
3. I'm 2 and 3. I'll take that. I mean, that's not that bad, right?
Well, you're about to be 3 and 3, or you're about to be 2 and 4.
I don't understand this. I'm still trying to figure out this app.
But you know how to screen share now.
Yeah, I learned that today, but yeah, no,
doing
I don't
great.
know how. Don't know how. Anyways, we'll
Me
figure
and-
that out later.
Ty, are we playing this week?
I think we are. You have one extra player than I do,
Uh-huh.
which is a problem.
Pick somebody up today.
Yeah, taking
Tiger
a look.
Woods is available.
Yeah, he says he's playing next week though.
Yeah, that
Oh,
doesn't help
never
me.
mind, never mind.
Tyler, I've never noticed this, but do you low-key like us to see your wall of memorabilia from all your bowling?
I don't have anywhere else to put it, so it goes on the wall.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's more than just that wall, I bet, though.
I have my ones from the Open on the other side because it moves that way.
So is that just this you challenge over there?
Yeah.
Oh.
Or
Well, on
YBC.
YBC, yeah, you can see the YBC banners.
It's been in every podcast, Tim.
I honestly don't pay attention to you.
Ty,
Clearly.
would you want to talk about fantasy golf about?
Just that
You
I'm
seem
way
super-
better.
Oh, okay.
I'm so
You
good.
seem super excited.
I'm
when I brought
killing
up.
it.
Jesus.
I have finally found a sport that I excel in.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not
you're
Besides
4-1.
bowling.
Daryl's 4-1. Kirkland's signature. I'm guessing that's Katie. Katie's 4-1,
Wow. She's really
And-
trying to change the script.
and a 3-2, which I think is Adam, and then the rest don't really matter at this point.
Who's the bottom one?
No, top six make playoffs, so it's fine.
Oh, that's
Who's the
true.
bottom?
Yeah, Tracy.
Oh,
But again,
Yeah.
she got shafted
She did.
no. Who? Why do you guys make up excuses for her? That is her problem.
because everyone likes Tracy.
Well, you know what? At this point, I don't like Tracy because she's my
She-
enemy right now in this.
She's the opposite of Tim. You try to stir the pot. You try to cause shit. And she's the
No,
one that tries to
no.
like not cause shit. She's the one that tries to
To be honest,
bring
with you-
everyone's shit together.
To be honest with you, she did say Curtis is her bitch for the Open because he is a rookie. We were all
That
there
is
at the Mercs game,
fantastic.
but when she said, and then Curtis is like, "Is it actually happening now?" She said, "Empty the dishwasher," and she walked away. It was like, "It's already happening."
Love it. Love it.
But no, Tracy's a saint. But at this point, I really don't care. I gotta not lose. So.
Well, right. Well, we should probably move to our guest.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. We can banter all day. But without further ado, we'll have Tim announce him.
Yeah. Mr. Bob Gaylor. Hey, Bob.
I'm still there, hey guys.
Yeah, you're still here. You made it.
You're the StreamYard Pro. Thanks for joining us today, Bob.
What?
Thanks for joining us today.
Okay, I'm going to turn it up a bit here.
Yeah,
Hang
no
on.
worries.
Sounds good.
There we go. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So how are things going? How are you doing out there?
Good. I like I said, I've been away from the game for a while, and I certainly do miss it. It's good to see you guys plugging the game and keeping it going because I know it's suffering big time here in BC. That's for sure, at least on the coast.
I think that's kind of across the country. It was kind of on a downward trajectory, but hopefully with us doing media and C5 and Bullcan and all this new stuff coming out, hopefully it brings it back.
We've seen some pretty good growth out there, Bob. You're right. Lower Mainland has been a little bit tougher for the growth side of it, but you see Okanagan starting to grow, and you're seeing lots of competitors come back. You're seeing BC, Northern BC start to come back quite a bit too. There's definitely an excitement out there that's been really good. Lower Mainland has been a little bit more difficult, but hopefully we get there too.
Well, I think part of the problem is that with the BC North and the Okanagan, they get a little bit more owly weather like you guys get. Down here in the Lower Mainland, guys golf all year long, sometimes. So we get a bit of snow and it's gone in 2 or 3 days. So it's really a different scenario.
You're absolutely right. I mean, they have year-round soccer leagues out there, year-round baseball leagues. Like, yeah. Totally get it. Bowling isn't necessarily the priority out there, that's for sure.
It used to be, though. I mean, when I first started, just to give you an example, I was talking to Gil Baldwin on the phone a couple of weeks ago. And we were talking about back when we were, younger and whatnot. And I, just for the heck of it, after I talked to him, I started writing down the number of lanes that have closed in the Lower Mainland since, mid 1960s when I first started bowling in Burnaby. And I counted about 38 lanes. And that's I might have missed some because I'd never bowled in them all, but I knew a lot of them. And 38 lanes, there's only half a dozen probably that are still in operation around here. And they're not really, top competitive leagues anymore. They're,
Yeah.
you go where you can sort of thing.
Because you guys have Commodore, Grandview, the Dell, Scottsdale, Abbotsford.
Yeah, Abbotsford's still in
Poco.
play, I think, and Poco. Yeah, they're looking to put up 12 new lanes here. They're going to. Brian Madasky, he was one of the good guys in the game with the proprietors. He really worked hard, and they're going to eventually take down his 14-lane house and put up a 12-lane house just down the block from it.
Oh, that's awesome. As long as we're keeping it, okay, good. Aldergrove, good. Does Maple Ridge still have one too?
Yeah, but I think it's more of a birthday party pizza house. It's not. It doesn't cater much to the bowlers anymore, and that's sad because that had Don and Ellen Duplessis that ran that place, and they had a first class operation with lots of leagues, lots of tournaments, and it was good for bowling. But now it's pretty sad.
Yeah, I think that's a struggle around the country too. Is that the industry as a whole has sort of shifted. Where a lot of it is the open play side of it, birthday parties, cosmic bowling, go out with some buddies and have some beers. It's a matter of trying to find a balance that kind of, fits all demographics that you're looking for. Yeah, we can't afford to lose all the league bowlers. The nice thing about having the birthday parties and stuff too, though, is that sometimes that's a segue for them to join into YBC and programs like that, if people are pushing them in that way. But
that's one of the big problems is it's really, I think, put a damper on the YBC leagues that the less houses, the less, junior bowlers you got coming up. And I think that's gonna be a real problem going forward on the coast here.
Yeah. I mean, even in Alberta, we have a problem where there's so many things for kids to do. And I think that's a big difference between now and the height of YBC bowling in the 80s and the start of the 90s. Is that there's just so many things. I mean, the advent of indoor soccer out here in Alberta really was a big detriment to 5-pit bowling and stuff like that as well. Yeah. And I can only imagine that it's way worse out on the coast.
It is.
Kevin, is Chili Bowl still open? I can't remember if Chili Bowl's
in Chilliwack.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know. I think it is. I haven't heard that it was closed, but there's an example. I was going to tell you guys years ago. It was one of the Valley tournaments in 1966. The Valley was 16 Lower Mainland centers, and we bowled in Chilliwack. And in those days, there was no houses around that could host the whole schmozzle. So and Chilliwack had 2 houses at that time. An upstairs and downstairs of one house and a newer house. So we bowled in one house one day and one in the other. And the second day, it was a 3-game tournament each day. And the second day, we were halfway through the men's team, which is the final event. And all of a sudden, I was just getting up to bowl. I was lead off, and the anchor was kept coming off. And all of a sudden, there was a sickening big crunch, and the floor shook, and everything went quiet. And we didn't know what. And then all of a sudden, it went crunch again, and it dropped again. And Christ, then there was a couple of screams from the spectators, and somebody had the presence of mind to yell for us bowlers to walk down the end of the lanes in front of the masking unit and out to the side wall. And when we went downstairs, right in the center of the lanes upstairs floor, it had dropped about 2 feet. It was just a miracle it didn't drop to the bottom.
Oh, my God.
I mean, talk about a memorable bowling experience. But besides that, we were bowling against a team for from Sapperton, a small center outside of New Westminster. And there was a fella on that team by the name of Doug Higgins. And he'd got off to a pretty good start, spare 4-bag or something like that. So when we left the bowling alley and had to wait till the other house to finish, then we come back there and they give us all a shadow ball. And this guy threw a strike. And I said to him, I said, geez, you should have saved that for the start you got. Well, he didn't really need it. He bowled a 401, half of it in one house and half of it in the other. Now, even George Boxwell hasn't done that.
Oh,
That was unreal. It's just Gil Baldwin would know the guy too from back in the day. Yeah, it was quite a.
Only guy ever to do that. I guarantee
Yeah,
that.
I mean, who else would even try it?
That's crazy.
Yeah. And the other thing that made that memorable was our Port Coquitlam team had never won a men's team event, and after we got back into the alleys, we finished that tournament up, and we won the men's team event that year for the first time by half a dozen pins. So it was a sort of a trifecta of remembrance of that house in Chilliwack.
That's awesome. You said that was 1966?
1966, yeah.
Yeah.
And that so what tournament you said that was the Fraser Valleys?
Yeah, the Senior Fraser Valley, yeah.
And that tournament still runs today, right?
No, apparently it quit a couple of 3 years ago. There's no tournaments that I know of around here anymore. There used to be the Pacific Coast, which was a good one, included Vancouver Island.
Yeah.
And then there was an invitational type tournament that ran from Abbotsford up the canyon up to Williams Lake and things like that. That ran for a while, and I don't think there's anything now.
Yeah, because they used to have the Fraser Valleys. Like that's the same as like the interiors, right?
Yeah.
Sort of style. Yeah, kind of like an open style format. That's too bad. Yeah, because that ran forever. So it hasn't ran since COVID. Really.
Well, it might have. I quite honestly don't know. It might have ran a year or two after that, but I doubt it. I don't think it's been going for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think I've heard about it running recently. I know interiors are still running, and like the northerns are still running.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lower Mainland.
But what a great event that was. So I mean, they had a lot of great players that played over the time, and you had kind of had I don't know, you kind of had pride in your own house, right? So everybody went out and played for the whatever it was, either the valleys or the coast or whatever like that. I think it was a great event. I think since Bob honestly sold Willowbrook, I think that was kind of like almost the last straw when they lost Willowbrook in that.
Yeah, that's probably right, because Bob Randall was another top proprietor too. He hung on for years, even when the business was dwindling, and the price of real estate out here in the Lower Mainland is just killing the bowling alleys. It doesn't make any sense to run a bowling alley when you can sell the property.
Yeah, and truthfully, I'm super grateful that Scottsdale has remained as a bowling alley, because when that place went up for sale, you know, you just think that that's just another one that's going to go wayward, and really grateful that the new owners decided to actually keep it as a bowling alley.
Yeah, I was surprised that I knew it had changed hands, but there's still got some leagues going in there anyways.
Yeah, they got some leagues, and they now have 8 lanes of 10-pin, but they've also got they've upgraded the bar and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So they're putting some work into there, which is good.
Cloverdale closed in that region, did it not?
Yeah,
It did,
yeah.
yeah.
That was an old house. That was the first house that I ever bowled in the Fraser Valley. It's been there forever. That was
Really?
I bowled in that in '59 for the seniors.
When we bowled our masters there for nationals, it was synthetic, and it was the heaviest synthetic I've ever played on in my life, and that includes Newfoundland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was chaos, and I remember that 1 to 11 was just regular, and then 13, 14 was family section. I think they had a family section so they can have alcohol
That's
over there.
yeah, that's part of the liquor license. That's the liquor laws out in BC. If you want to have liquor being able to serve out in general public, you have to have a family only section. So they made it as 13, 14 in order to do that.
Well, there's different. When I first bowled in that house in '59, they just added on, I think, 4 lanes on the right hand side, and they hadn't finished doing the renovation yet. So the alley approaches were all open, but there was a wall. The original wall was down all the way down to the foul line, separating the lanes.
Speaking of Mr. Gill, big fan of the show, big fan of the Oilers. Bob, where did you start bowling? Where did you start bowling, Bob?
In Port Coquitlam, yeah. I just lived a block or so away from the bowling alley, and when they built it, and it took me. I think they built it in 1950, and I don't think I started bowling until about 50. Well, I was 12, so 55, 56.
How'd you get into bowling?
Well, there was a buddy of mine, Gil would know him, Fred Sabatine. He's a fella, he's 10 years older than me, but I've known him most of my life. And he was involved in soccer and baseball, and I knew he bowled as well, too. So he was pretty much the sports idol of the day, you know, and I ended up playing soccer with him and fastball, and he coached a lot of our teams. So, yeah, he was a real influence getting out on the lanes. He won some he won the first PNE. I don't know if you guys knew about the PNE tournament that they used to hold. They used to set lanes up at the PNE. And I don't know how many years that ran, but the initial year was the first year was 1959, and Fred won that. That was a match play tournament, and that ran.
Okay, so you have to fill us in. What's the P&E?
It's like a carnival.
National Exhibition.
Yeah.
The exhibition, it runs at the end of August into September.
Okay.
So that'd be like the Reno tournament they did in the PBA where it's
The
outside.
CNE, yeah. You guys have or back east they have a Canadian national exhibition, yeah.
So did they play outside or they play inside?
No, they set up two lanes, and it was all covered and heated and whatnot. But it was quite and they like I say, they ran that for at least 6 years. I bowled twice in it. Got beat the first match the first time, and the second match the second time. But that's another story.
So how many was there stands, or just anybody could walk beside the
Yeah.
lanes, or?
Yeah, there was a bleacher set up behind it and whatnot, and
Okay.
it was pretty much it was a big deal. You had to you were given times whether you were working or not. You had to take time off to get into bowl because you might bowl in the middle of the afternoon on a Wednesday or something like that. So yeah, and I think they had some pot game play as well, but I never got involved. Now I was pretty young at the time, so
That's
that-
awesome though.
Yeah. That kind of leads me into a question. I know like we could go through thousands of stories. I'm sure like through your career, there's lots of people in the comments explaining like they played on teams with you. They've seen you play like against Joe Cranenbetter and all that stuff. We want to know, even though we don't condone it, how many big pot games were there? And we hear in that region they were massive.
well, the pot games. Well, I think most of the pot games were before I come onto the scene, because I used to see guys like the big players like Frank Fillinger and Ernie Ray and Dave Bissett and guys like that. That was in I guess the late 50s. My dad and I won a father and son tournament one time at the Deluxe Lanes in Vancouver, and they used to have a theater section up high where you could sit and watch. And I talked to, I don't know if you're familiar with Billy Smith. I bowled with Billy in our Canadian team in '68, and Billy won the 50-game marathon one time, and he was telling me he used to come down with his mom shopping on a Saturday and sit up in the theater booth and watch all the pot games going on. Now those guys never got recognized near like they should have, and I think part of the reason is because there wasn't the tournaments. Like there was no Masters tournament then, and I don't even know how far back the Western went, but a lot of these guys, I look at that 100 bowlers, men and women, and there's so many guys that are missed off that I don't know who picked the teams, but the guys that should have been recognized got whipped right over. Even Bert Griffin's name I don't think is on there.
No. I can give you some insight on that. I don't think, looking back, I mean, I wasn't part of anything, but that's 15 years ago when they did it. It was based off of submissions from people, and I don't think, honestly, I think we did a better job, especially with people like yourself and Don Sim and Kevin Jepson, those guys are creating kind of a history book.
Yeah.
But they didn't have that, and then only X amount of entries were submitted based off membership per province. So, like for example, Ontario could have had 15 out of the 100, and
Yeah.
Alberta could have had 8, and where Nova Scotia had 1, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it was, looking back, I mean, I wasn't at the meetings. I think it was kind of definitely missing a lot of people, and I think honestly a lot of it was a popularity contest at some point.
Well-
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it too, it happened with the PBA too, right? Before the USBC started and all that stuff. They had large pot games and stuff like that where cities, like players out of each city would travel and compete for large cash or whatever, but they
Yeah.
were never considered into the Hall of Fame till the PBA Tour got started. And then they're like, hey, these guys were great players just because they weren't part of the USBC and all that stuff. Like they recognize them. And I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the route we're trying to go with this podcast is we know there was tons of players that aren't recognized
Yeah.
just due to those associations probably didn't know about them because they were in different events or more local players than national players, right?
Well, they should have talked to old guys like me and Ray Walls and guys like that. And
Yeah.
better. There was lots of old bowlers that, were hard pressed to give up their spot in BC. Because, like I was telling you, the 8 Masters team I bowled on, I didn't join the Masters till 87. I think I was 43 or 44 then, and I finished in the last team I made was 2000, so I was about 57 or 58. Of those 8 teams, 3 of those teams I had 3 guys older than me that I bowled on. So it was Cranabedder and Kitamura and
Yeah.
Bordenstrom and Don Pratt and Ray Walls. There's a lot of the younger guys, and I had the privilege of bowling with a lot of the real top young bowlers. I bowled with Doug Mosdell in an open tournament in about 1979 when he was just a teenager. And then I bowled with Dave Gorley.
Dave Gorley, yeah.
But Dave was a little, at least in his 20s when I bowled, but I bowled Bobby Herman when he was a teenager too.
Oh, jeez.
Lots of
See,
tournaments. Yeah.
Now you're naming players that I've played against.
Well, I also played with one of your buddies, Jordan Shoes. The last zone team I made was 2012. God, I don't know how old I was then, but I made the mixed team with him, and we lost, I think, in the final game in the step ladder, or we'd have gone to the Canadian. If he had a bowled better, we'd have won it.
Oh,
So tell him that.
yeah, we can definitely tell him that for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen him for a while, but I know he's done really well. When I first met Jordan, we had a Friday night league at the Dell, and he was always hanging around there. I bowled him before we bowled, and then one year we needed a competitive bowler to fill out one of the teams, and he didn't have the money to put in. He was just a kid, so the proprietor forego the lineage, and we kicked in the pot money for him. And his mom come down, I remember, and she said that she got a hold of Don Pratt and I, and she said she'd make sure she had him here every night before the bowling started at 7:00. But we had to drive him home before we went to the bar afterwards. So that's what we had to do.
That's awesome.
He's a great kid, and I see he's doing really well in your tournaments and that too, eh?
Very good.
Yep, he's a really good player, that's for sure.
And a nice young fella too. Yeah.
Yeah. We do have a question here for you, Bob. From Kevin McAlpine. He said, do you know of a 100-game marathon that was held in the 50s or 60s?
Jack Simons from 100 Mile House. I had a clipping of it. I don't think it was there were no 100 games. It was 50-game marathon. That's where I first met Don Sim.
Oh, okay.
I bowled in 3 50-game marathons in I think very early 60s. I guess I was 19 or 20, something like that. And we'd start bowling at I think 8:00 on a Saturday night and finish up about 6:00 on Sunday night. And some of those guys, the 2 of the winners that I remember were Ray Bryant. There's another guy that was a top bowler, never really got much recognition. And Billy Smith, who I mentioned, he was another winner. And some of those guys, I'm honest to God, the drinking that they did the whole tournament long, and they averaged 272 to win too. It was unreal. No 100 games.
I can't believe it because I know people struggle when we used to do the 20 gamer.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the 50 gamer. Like you definitely have to pace yourself.
That note that was out there, Jack Simons, if that's the Jack Simons, I remember him from 100 years ago. He bowled out a Mission, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it very well could be that one. Yeah. Oh, Don Sims on. Yeah, he says Norm Goldie, Bill Briggs. Yeah.
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 I
Yeah.
bowled against Norm Goldie too, yeah.
Maybe we can touch base on a little bit. I know you don't like talking much about yourself, but I'm interested to hear about the Western Canadians, especially. Obviously, you had to make the Western Canadian team. You won in 1967, and I believe you had a really good. I think Ian Fraser was third from Edmonton, and there was another gentleman that was second that I recognized as well.
Boxwell.
Yes.
George Boxwell. Well, I tell you, I got really lucky on that because I was a rookie that year, and to happen to come to Winnipeg and bowl as well as I did, I didn't really expect that, but it happened. And then when I ended up winning the Western, I assumed they were going to do it the same way they'd always done it, just a one-on-one against the Eastern champ. But because 2 years prior to that, a friend of mine, Ray Aney, had won the singles. I think he bowled against Billy Holt. And and then for some reason they decided they changed the format. But what they did was I was the top bowler in BC. Unfortunately for Richard Grubb, who I only beat by 5 pins, he couldn't compete again in the singles. But they took the top finisher in each of the Western provinces and give them a chance to bowl in the Canadian. So there was Ian Fraser and John Gledhill and a fella from Saskatchewan. I can't remember his name. And then the two Eastern bowlers came, Al Snow and George Boxwell. And that was the first I had heard of Boxwell. And he's about the same age as I am, I think. But they had a little dinner beforehand, and they were announcing. When I heard what Boxwell had done, I thought, holy Jesus, Murphy, he's going to clean up the floor with us. And he probably would have cleaned up the floor with me if it had been a one-on-one. But what they did was they had 3 sets of lanes with 2 bowlers bowling on it. So I wasn't bowling against one bowler every game. You'd switch off. So I only bowled against George Boxwell maybe 2 or 3 times. And he opened the show with a 370 game right off the bat. If he had done that to me all by myself, I'd have probably been done and cooked right then and there. But I think they went 1 year with that, then they changed it back. I don't know. I think they went back to one-on-one after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then so what was the story? I mean, I've heard it through. We're fortunate enough that through Jerry Anderson, she told us a lot of stories from the Western Canadians out in Edmonton. But how, like, if you won the Westerns, you automatically got on a train or you automatically got transported to the Nationals right afterwards. Is that correct?
Well, no. Well, in our case, we had to hang around Winnipeg for 2 or 3 days because that's where the Canadians was held. So we waited for the Eastern bowlers to get there. But another time, I don't know what they've done in the past, but the next year when our men's team won in Saskatoon, they usually bowled it, like you said, I think within the week of the Westerns. But they held us back that year until the long weekend, the May long weekend, and we went back to Niagara Falls.
Mm. Yeah,
Crazy.
That was quite the trips back then, like.
It was great.
Yeah, Jerry would tell us about like winning and then having to jump on a train the next day.
Well, I think the train action was before I got into it. I heard some of those stories too.
I mean, I still think
I got
that'd be
to fly.
great. Even now, like, could you imagine going to Nationals and taking a train ride across the country?
I
That'd
can't
be
imagine
awesome.
what shape they were in by the time they got off that.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Bring it on.
We have-
Bring it on.
4.5-hour bus ride to Grand Prairie in a month, and like that's enough to ruin a person.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
No,
That's amazing.
there's a lot of.
I love that.
And obviously, your team won the Western Canadians in 1968 as well.
Yep.
And then obviously, then you moved into the C5 a little bit. 1978 was your first championship on the mixed team, correct?
Yeah. I don't know if you knew. Well, you know Wayne Davies for sure.
Yeah.
Wayne, a good friend of mine, and I worked with Wayne for over 30 years, like Doug Mosdell. And Wayne and I were both on that team. But the saddest thing to remember about that 78 thing was, it'll always stick in my mind too, was we had just got onto the lanes and done our warm up, and then they announced that they were going to have the dignitaries come in and do their thing. So we backed up on the approach. We were right in the middle of the house. So these guys get out and I don't think it was the mayor that was there. It was one of the aldermen, and he got up and said a few words, and he stepped back and he went right over backwards, and you could hear him hit the floor. And we were bowling against the Northwest Territories, and I mean, I was shocked like everybody else. We were standing there, dumbfounded at what had happened. But this young girl from the Northwest Territories, she went blazing across the floor, pushed people aside, ripped open her shirt, and was giving him CPR inside of a second. And then they had the paramedics come shortly after that. And when they finally, settled things down, and she came back on the lanes, she said, unfortunately, I think the poor guy was dead before he hit the ground. Must have had a massive. It was something that just so sad to start a bloody bowling tournament off with.
Holy crap!
Yeah.
Wow.
It sounds like bowling with you is scary.
Yeah, it's scary.
A bowling alley almost collapsed on you. A guy has a heart
Really
attack.
scary. If you were bowling against me just one-on-one, then my stellar performance wasn't so good. I only bowled in the TSN once, and I bowled the first game 8:00 in the morning against a young French Canadian guy. I can't remember his name, but I never bowled against him before or after. But he waxed me in the first game. We had a 3 or 4 frame carryover, and I get up on a double and miss the head pin and spare it up. And I come back, and he gets up there, and I know he was even more nervous than me. And he thumps the ball into the foul line. It bounced about 3 feet in the air. When it hit the lane, it went right in the pocket, and I was done. And then, my claim to fame there was he went on to beat everybody else too, and he won the tournament. So
Oh wow!
That's always okay.
You lost to the champion. You can't do
That's
nothing.
exactly.
yeah, I can tell you another. I was an inspiration to anybody that faced me one-on-one because they beat me and then went on to win something. Because in 79, I bowled 4 years in the provincials. I made the stepladder. In 79, I think I finished maybe second, and Kip Smith beat me, and he went on to win the next match and win the provincial. Then in 84, I finished fourth, and my first match was Red Brochu, and he beat me. And I was bowling pretty good. He had Mark in the 10th to beat me, and he went right up through the ladder, won the provincials, went to the Canadian, led the 10-game match there, and I think he bowled 2 400s doing it. And then he went on to, in his one match in the stepladder, he bowled something like 338 and won the Canadian. So
That's awesome.
Wow.
then the next 86, 87, I can't remember whether I finished first or second, but I bowled the final game in both of them. In 86, I lost to my buddy Wayne Davies. It was kind of an ugly thing. We both punched and struck and didn't have much going. He struck in the 10th and got a head pin on it. Then I get up and I got to count. I'm on a double. I got to count 93 in those 3 frames. So I had to hit the head pin. If I get a strike, I beat him. If I get a corner spare, I got to spare it and count 5. If I miss, I got to hit it on the side 2 times in a row. So I got up and boldly threw that and punched the head pin, and then Wayne went to the Canadian. The next year was a real killer. I was bowling against Jim Buhner from Rutland, and I had him on the ropes going into the 9th frame, but I'm on a double, punch the 9th, and that give him an opening. He gets up in the 9th and 10th and goes strike, corner spare. And I'm sitting there looking at the scoreboard thinking, oh no, I'm having flashbacks to the year before. He's 16 pins ahead of me now. I got to have a mark in the 10th frame. So I get up and get a heavy left. It wiggles a little bit, but it's a string house and it ain't going nowhere. I throw out, as I'm standing, I'm thinking to myself, don't be lazy with this ball and miss it on the alley. Be aggressive. So I'm aggressive, all right. I throw it, falls in the ditch just as it nicks the pin, and I lose by 1 pin. And that was the year. That's the one that I wake up screaming about. That one. That was the 1987, so that would have been the 20-year anniversary from winning the singles, and it would have gone back to Winnipeg. And not only that, Jim got that for winning the singles that year. He got a free shot in at the TSN and the CBC too. So that was a costly left corner that I blew away. So these guys that beat me in one-on-one, they went on to win everything.
Yeah,
That was easy.
So, you talked a little bit about TSN. I have had some people ask me about this a little bit. One person wrote in, someone told me TSN Pins game considered implementing a shot clock after he competed. I had somebody else message me saying, please ask him about his 40-second approach. So, let's hear a little bit about your style.
Well, it's funny because everybody asked about it, but I don't know how the hell they ever come onto it, because when I was younger, in my 20s and 30s, I didn't bowl like that. But actually, I was probably a better bowler when I was in my 40s and 50s than I was when I was younger. But I didn't bowl at all during the summer, and I played senior men's fastball. I couldn't wait to get bowling finished to get into the gym, and I played ball all summer long. So I didn't throw a ball till after Labor Day. And I think how I ended up getting so bloody close to the foul line was that I come in cold turkey, and I had trouble with my timing and hitting the head pin and stuff like that. And the closer I got to the foul line, the better I was. And once I started working, I guess I just stayed there. It was hard to get yourself going from that close up, though.
No, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
That was a four. Sean Eby. It was a 4-step too. The first step was maybe a little bit backwards. Get myself going.
Give yourself a running start.
Yeah. Gil wanted us to ask about your 4-step. He said it wasn't a 4-step, but you say it was a 4-step, and yeah.
It was a shuffle start to get going.
Yeah. I guess it could work though. I mean, think about it. Less room for error within that parameter of it was actually 24 inches, right? And your timing could be a lot better too once you got into
Well, I think
it, right?
that's how I morphed into it, because I was so out of timing and out of practice come the first part of September that it was the only way I could get onto the middle again.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But I mean, lots of people have been successful doing that. Like George Schillebeer used to do, his 1-step from the approach or from the foul line, just like nice and close and slow and easy. And
Yeah.
There's a couple players now that are real close to the foul line. Like, look at Aaron Arndt. Aaron is a couple steps from the foul line.
Yeah.
my best year at Masters Nationals was probably when I basically snapped my ankle in May, and I didn't know whether I was going to be able to play. And so I go up I just moved way up and just went super slow, and I played really well.
Yeah.
There's definitely some merit behind it for sure.
Well, there was more free fall houses when I was bowling, and some of the houses were lightning fast. So from being up close, I could throw the ball slower then and control the angle. And when I got into the string houses, I play at different angles and maybe throw a little harder. But now I watch you guys throw. You throw 100 miles an hour.
I think the game's changed a lot. I'm not going to lie to you, Bob. I think synthetic lanes have really changed everything, and and plastic pins. I think those two.
Plastic pins, yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's changed a whole lot. Maybe you can touch base. Free fall versus string. Like, what was the difference in your game that you had to make? Because obviously you're talking about different lines, maybe different approach, maybe different angle. Like,
well, it was funny. Like, I can remember Richard Grubb ran North Shore Bowl. That was a free fall house, and I found I'm one of these guys that people used to laugh, but I used to make little notes for myself that I'd carry in my bowling bag, so from one house to the other, because sometimes I'd like to get off to a good start rather than fumble around for 5 frames or so. But Richard's house, it was a free fall house. I remember throwing the ball harder there, and as long as you keep the pins down, you were okay.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part these days too. Is keeping the pins down is a struggle now, especially with the advent of the black bases. Inherently, those pins have to go up now. So that's where, yeah, and free fall slower was definitely better for free fall for sure.
It's so weird, and like I kind of want to stay on Bob's story and stuff like that, but like you just mentioned, like black bases and how the pins bounce more. But we recently played in a couple houses that are still on white bases, and it seemed like the pins were flying more than they do with black bases. So I don't know. It's weird combo. You don't see flying pins as much, and I think there was a few people mentioning on a couple weekends ago. You don't see pins flying into the other lanes as much anymore and stuff like that. Where a few years ago, pins used to fly into lanes every tournament. You'd see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Weird.
but yeah, I mean, the last place I saw flying them into the other lane, I think I did it in Red Deer, which was interesting. But that
on white
again,
bases.
white bases, yeah.
Bob, did you notice a difference between wood pins and plastic pins over?
I can honestly say I didn't, because I wouldn't have known one from the other unless someone else told me about it. So, no, but you guys are talking about the bases of these pins now. Have they done something to doctor the pins up now?
Mm-hmm. So the physical base is actually, I believe, an eighth of an inch taller, and it's a smaller base. It's a narrow base, so it topples easier.
The idea is to get the recreation bowlers more into the game, I guess.
Yeah, to get better scores. Yeah.
Well, when I first started bowling, I could never understand how stupid it was that the left corner was the counter when the head pin was worth 5 points. So it took a long time for them to finally do that, because in 1968, when we bowled in Niagara Falls for the Canadian, the first 5 games we bowled with the counter, the left pin, and the last 5 games we bowled with no counter. And with bowlers like that, didn't make a heck of a lot of difference, but it was finally the selling point for getting rid of the counter.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
Sure.
I think that was I think that was a really good call.
It was tough for YBC bowlers to go up there and maybe get 3 left corners in a row and miss them all and count nothing. And his partner gets up and gets 3 right corners and gets 39 for his 3 frames. It was kind of hard to justify that to a kid that he knocked down 4 pins. He's got nothing.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, how many of those peewees are going to have a score of 0?
Yeah, exactly.
Hard to keep kids invested in that. But yeah, interesting. Lots of advents and lots of changes in the game throughout the years, but
I was looking at, you guys have a stat sheet or something that I happened to glance at, and I see a lot of the guys that I used to bowl against are still bowling. I see Gigliak's name.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Giggy.
Yep.
I mean,
Darren Rich
yeah,
and
yeah.
Blair Pizzy.
yeah.
And Gene Zebarth and Len Ansath. I see all these guys' names. They must have thought I was an old bugger when I was bowling against them way back when.
I tell you
I
what,
realized
Bob,
how young they all were.
well, they are the old buggers now. I can tell you that for sure.
And Mortar and Lynn Howell, too. I guess they were just kids when I was bowling against, so they must have thought we were a bunch of old farts, too.
Yeah, Lynn's 16.
Mortar's retired.
And I see some of the names. They must be sons of the guys like Victor Fobert.
Lawrence's son.
Lawrence Fobert, I think I bowled against him. And Willie Orn, I know I bowled against him from Winnipeg. And he's got a son, Derek, that bowls with you guys now?
Oh, he's out in BC now. He's out in your neck of the woods.
Is he? Oh, yeah.
He is now, yeah. He
No,
plays out as the Dell, I believe.
Oh, yeah. I was surprised to see a lot of these guys. When I was bowling against them, I thought they were the same age as me, but I guess they weren't. He was the only guy that's the same age as me.
Well, no, Lenny looked old already, right? And he still is. But
Bob should go watch Derek, because he throws the same as Willie.
No,
Not at all.
no.
Not at all.
Derek may throw the fastest ball I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
there was a fella who used to bowl out of Winnipeg with Norm Shannis, Bernie Johnson. He's the hardest thrower I've ever seen. God, he just reared back, and they had some top bowlers back there then, but he was the fastest thrower I'd ever seen. I mean, full approach, full arm swing.
Yeah. Must be a Winnipeg thing.
Yeah.
You should go
Well,
down
I
and
don't
watch
know.
him.
You guys all chuck the ball pretty hard too.
We get it down the lane for sure.
Carry the hardest of all of us. I think I shoot like 43, 44. Tim's like what, maybe 40, 41? Ty, you're
no, I'm
about
40,
the same. Right?
43. I'm 43.
Okay, 43.
Yeah, I'm like 41.
Yeah. Yours has gotten faster since you started doing squats. Well, it's true. Like 4 years ago, I think you were like 37.
A little more
38.
than that.
38, yeah.
My last year senior, I was throwing 40s. Before
He's a
that,
man
I was
now.
like 36.
I'm a big boy.
But looking back, Bob, I'm looking through some of the stats here. When you guys won in '88, that was in Gatineau. You had quite the team. If you're looking back at it, Kelly Glencross was a hell of a player back then, right?
Yeah, I bowled with Kelly a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Don Hanley. You had Laurie Houston, Gerald Mueller. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't seen Gerald in forever. And Don Pratt, obviously. Don was a hell of a player back then as well. Did you have any favorite teammates back in the day that kind of stood out to you?
Well, I bowled with Pratt quite a bit, and in the Masters, I bowled with Cranbetter. He's a real class act, and
He's awesome.
He's a great guy. For a little guy, I was always amazed at what big hands he had. The ball just fit right in it, and he was one of the best. I remember him. To show you what a class guy he was back in mid '60s, I guess, when I was working, and there was a coffee shop right close to where I worked. And I went in there one day, and who's sitting there but Joe Cranbetter? Now he didn't know me from Adam, but I knew him, and he's sitting talking to the owner of the cafe. So I asked him when he left. I said, "How do you know Joe?" He said, "Oh, Joe used to board with me when I was working in Surrey." So the next time Joe Cranbetter came out to the cafe, Don brings him over to work, and he asked me when I got off work, and I told him about 4:00. So he waited around for me, and we went over to the Poco Bowling Alley and bowled a couple of games. I thought, what a class guy! Some kid that he doesn't even know comes over, and I like I say, Joe was one of the guys I bowled with at least 3 times in the Masters, and
That's awesome.
always one of the best.
Mm-hmm.
Gil's asking this question, and I was hoping to touch on as well too. Can you touch a little bit on like Frank Levine? Did you ever get to play with Frank?
Well, I got to know Frank a bit over the years that he was here. To be quite honest, I never watched him when he was at his best, but I bowled against him a couple of times in the Fraser Valley tournament. But what I seen of Frank when he bowled then, Maple Ridge was one house that sticks in mind. The house was really fast, and when Frank came there to throw that ball, it never got it never got the reverse momentum on it. It slid too far, and he got a ton of corner pins, but he never missed one. He was just absolutely unbelievable. And I don't know if I dug this out because I didn't know if have you ever seen his average score from the 75, 76 Grandview lanes?
Honestly, I've spent some time in Grandview lanes, and they have them all up on the wall there, and I've taken pictures of it.
I should
I've read the articles.
I should send you guys a copy of it because I got it here. He averaged 329 for 132 games. He never missed a week. And I don't. You guys must be the same, even being younger. Doesn't matter how many you bowl every week. There's some weeks you just don't feel like you got it, but he bowled every week. And here's Larry Johnson. I don't know if you knew Larry.
Oh yeah, very well.
Years ago, great guy. And Larry told me that, and I'm looking at the sheet here now. The first 8 weeks, Frank bowled. He only averaged 257, and he was a great better. He lined up a whole bunch of guys' bets, I guess, on what he figured he could bowl in the house. And I guess once he got these guys sucked into the bet, I guess the bet might have been he could bowl 300, because once he got down a ways, they increased the bet again. Maybe it was 310. Ended up 325, but he ended up 329 because for the last 100 games, I figured it out. He averaged 353 for his last 100 games in that league. I mean, I don't care who dresses the lanes for, for anybody. That's
it's unbelievable. I had heard that like he would go in every day, find out what lane he was bowling on, and then he would go in and he would throw until he threw a perfect game on that set.
Well, in this sheet that I'm looking at, he bowled three perfect games, and here's one that really blew me away. He bowled 1605 for 4 games.
Yeah.
I mean that's and he bowled the second one. He had a 15. This was even more amazing. At a 1528 with a 274 game in it. So he was just absolutely unbelievable, accurate. And the only other time I actually bowled with him, I bowled in the All-Star League in Vancouver, and Frank bowled. The one year I bowled when he was bowling there, he averaged about 262, I think it was, and his knee was bothering him so bad he couldn't get down low enough to throw the ball the way he wanted to, so he was throwing a hard hook ball. But same thing, he was accurate as the devil. He just didn't get the strikes that he got before. But he was a great competitor. God, I heard that he went back to places like I think it was Fairview. I went back to Fairview a couple of times, but I think he went back. I heard the same as you're talking about his daily routine. He'd go back maybe a week ahead of time and bowl at these houses to find out how his ball was going to take and the different conditions and whatnot.
I mean, that makes sense. A week before almost makes sense because, like, if you're going to start a tournament on a Saturday, go down on the Saturday before.
Yeah.
Their oiling patterns and stuff will probably be
I know.
comparable to that, and that makes sense, but wild.
Yeah, he was. I got Tim. I got your address. I'll send you a copy of that. It's just unbelievable to look at.
It's wild. Do you know if he worked? Like, what was his profession?
Well,
or was it bowling?
I tell you, Frank, I understand he played the ponies a lot. He was a great pool shot, and he played lots of cards. I remember one Saturday morning here in Pitt Meadows where I live now. I was going to work early on a Saturday morning because I don't normally work Saturday. I was going to work in the yard, and I stopped in at McDonald's to grab a coffee on my way, and there's Frank Levine sitting there. He'd been in an all-night poker game out in Maple Ridge. He always found a card game, or so. The answer to that is I don't know if he ever worked or not.
Just a professional gambler. Okay.
Yeah, crazy.
Crazy.
But I heard that he bowled perfect game in duck pins, 10 pins, and 5 pins. Now I don't know if that's a fact or not, but knowing him, I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. I would assume duck pin would be pretty crazy to throw a perfect game, but with his shots, it was built for soft belly duck pin for sure.
That's what that shot was built for. The idea
For
that
sure.
you throw a hook ball or a backup ball, you got the deflection one side or the other. But with Frank's ball, it hit the pins and it churned, and the pins were just tumbling. And now I watch the odd duck pin game on television and on YouTube, and they're throwing the ball 100 miles an hour. I don't know.
Different versions though. The hard belly.
That's hard belly.
Yeah, the hard belly you throw hard. The soft belly you don't. And like I think
see.
I think the perfect game is a lot more common in the soft belly. I mean, I actually saw a video.
You're talking rubbers on this.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I think Frank
For
developed.
sure. In Quebec, it would have been for sure.
I didn't really
called
even
rubber
realize it was
ducks,
a different thing there.
Yeah. I saw a video like 3 years ago of an older lady that threw. It was 3 consecutive perfect games. She shot a perfect 900 in Quebec somewhere. I can't remember what it was, but so I would not be surprised if Frank had multiple perfect games in that as well, for sure.
It's unreal.
Crazy.
So Bob, getting back to you, you had 2 perfect games in your career as well.
Yeah.
Where were they thrown at?
The first one was a roll-off on a Sunday afternoon for the Fraser Valley Tournament in Poco. And the second one was a Friday night in the Dell, and I enjoyed that because Dave Gorley was sparing that night and he was bowling against me, so I bowled the first game.
Nice.
That's awesome.
They were
That's
tw-
back when the Dell was free fall as well, right?
They were, yeah. And on 71, I'm just trying to remember when Mel Madasky put string setters in Poco, because Poco was one of the first houses in the Lower Mainland to have the string setters. So, because I remember there was a house out near UBC, I think it was called Alamo Bowl, that he took us out, a few of us up from Poco, to show us what this, because we thought he was nuts, pins with strings on them. How is that going to work, But he took us out to show us this house, and we bowled a few games there. Then the next thing you know, he's got him in his place. So it might have been string when I bowled it in 71. I can't even remember.
Crazy.
But I botched up more 450s than I bowled. I think I told you that.
Same.
I had a 448 at the Dell. I think I read one of you guys had a 448, didn't you?
Tim's got a 448.
Tim.
I have a 446.
Yeah, I had a 448 too. That was kind of a little bit of a shaker.
Yeah, it was lovely. And then the next week I was on the same set, and I hung a corner for losing the perfect game pot for or the exact, I guess, for over 10 grand. So so they cut the pin off for me. I was like, well, thanks guys, with the same corner. But it is what it is, right? I mean, most people would love to even shoot a 448, right? So perfect games, you have to get lucky. I think you really have to sometimes.
You're right, because I know a lot of good bowlers, top bowlers, the guys that I bowled with for years that haven't had a perfect game yet. And the same boat, I know lots of guys that I didn't think could hit the head pin 6 times in a row, never mind get 12 hits in a row and all these strikes. So
Yeah,
there's a hell of a lot of luck involved in it.
absolutely. I think I like what I like about your stats is you mentioned you have 14 different houses you shot 400s with.
Yeah, I got thinking about that because when I was digging through some stuff to find out, some of this information, Kevin Jepson had phoned me about getting a bunch of information for the Western book that he's writing. And that's when I come across a bunch of this stuff, because I had it in boxes in my crawl space. And I got thinking about the houses that I know I bowled 400s in. And what did I say, 14? I think it was. I counted. Yeah.
Just shows how consistent you were across all. It wasn't just one house, right?
Well, at least I could hold my own on other houses. I don't know how, a lot of them houses I only bowled one in it, but
Yeah.
Whatever.
I bowled mostly in the Dell and Poco over the years.
Well, kind of getting close to wrapping this all up. Is there anything you want to touch on, Bob, that we haven't kind of gone through yet? Is there a specific story you want to touch on, or even about the game that you've seen? I know you said you haven't paid much attention to the game as of late, but is there anything you want to talk about?
Well, I think we touched on. I was going to tell that story about Chilliwack Bowl Alley, because
Yeah.
the hair on my arm still stands up when I talk about it.
Yeah.
Everybody thought we were going to the basement. I'm telling you, it was scary. But no, but you guys should deserve a tip of the hat for what you're doing to keep the game alive and going. I mean, you're helping the BC guys that got no place to bowl now, and guys like Tom Patterson. I know he's closer to my age, but he's done a lot for the game.
Tons.
Writing books and holding schools and stuff like that. And Kevin Jepson, these guys, and Fraser Hamley. I got to know Fraser pretty well, because in '68 when we bowled in the men's team against him, he was bowling on the Niagara team against us, and he was also bowling the singles. He won the singles the year after I did. And every time I touched base with Fraser, he was always, he really loved the game. He couldn't talk enough about it. So you guys that are doing the work deserve the tip of the hat.
Every time
We're just a
ever
bunch
heard
of
about-
idiots talking.
Yeah, that's so true. Every time we've ever heard about Fraser, we've heard nothing but, it isn't even just the bowling about Fraser. It was just who he was as a human being too,
Yeah.
And that's so important in furthering the game itself. If you have welcoming, endearing people, you're gonna be more likely to have people carry on the game. as opposed to people just being cutthroat and dinks. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Fair enough.
Bob, maybe something we can. I have a question. With your bunch of experience out there, for bowlers that are wanting to get competitive or get better, what are some things they should work on? Whether it's their mental game or what are your ideas to make them better?
Well, I honestly think that the only reason I was successful from the close-up stance that I used and whatnot was, I guess, the mental part of the game. I worked at that, but I'll tell you, you got to really work at it, because 10th frames weren't exactly my forte when it come to match play. I remember that, and I was looking. I know I was going to tell you guys. I saw a stat from the old Commodore lanes. Wayne Davies, who I bowled with, Wayne and I bowled together for years in Port Coquitlam and in a couple of zones and whatnot. But I saw a stat. He bowled 6 years in the Commodore, and I don't think there's a better guy to finish a game than him, because 5 of those 6 years he averaged 10 hits or better in the league, and that's pretty amazing, because you're going to bugger a few frames up along the way, but you got to finish games to get that back up to 10 shots a game, and it's a mental part of the game that puts that into play too. So yeah, but you guys all know it now. Practically every house is a string house now, and I think it requires a faster shot. So you gotta. I watched, as a matter of fact, I watched a few frames of Jordan throwing, and I mean, he's bigger now. He must be in his 30s now. Like I said, I haven't seen him for a few years, but he looks like he throws that ball pretty darn hard now too.
Yeah, he throws it really hard.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of slow shots anymore. That kind of, like, Diane Violini might be one of the most standout slower shots. She can still play, but
forever, yeah.
tons of corners, and that's the game she's built, and she's still winning. She won South Zone here in Alberta last 2 weekends ago, so she's still
for her. Gosh.
Yeah, she killed it.
Yeah,
she's doing great.
I met her. I guess she was bowling in '78 when we were in Thunder Bay. I know she was maybe on the ladies team then, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Every tournament I've been in, I know she's been at it, because she.
Pretty much.
I know I know how tough it is to get out of BC, and I can only imagine how tough it is to get out of Ontario, then to get into a couple of years running in a team there. But she was always one of the top bowlers that I ever seen, women bowlers for sure.
Still is.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, I think we'll wrap this podcast up. Obviously, Bob, we can talk to you for hours, and maybe we'll be lucky enough to get you back on so we can go over some more of these stories. But
hey, that's
try
great.
and keep
I got a million stories.
Yeah, for sure. We love them. Thanks very much for coming on, and everybody else, tune in to 5PL this Sunday. We got lots of team matches going on.
Well, thanks a lot for having me, guys. And like I said, Tim, I'll send you a copy of this.
Please do.
It's just amazing to look at.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks again, Bob, for coming on.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Pleasure. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you, Bob.